Whoever controls the Adriatic controls the fate of Rome. Imagine vast rafts descending from the forests of the Carnic Alps downriver, carrying timber to feed the shipyards of Ostia. Think of the Dalmatian deposits, where barrels of pitch and copper ingots depart to forge weapons and ships in the workshops of Capua. From the Gargano, meanwhile, an even more precious cargo sets sail: salt, vital for preserving food for dozens of Roman legions. But this vast trade network has a weak point. Every convoy passes near the ports of Brindisi and Taranto, separated by just 100 kilometers of sea. A single attack by Illyrian pirates or the ships of the young and ambitious King Philip V of Macedonia would be enough to shatter this fragile balance. Rome knows it well. This is no longer a matter of local rivalries, but of the Republic's very survival and control of the central Mediterranean. But why is the young Macedonian sovereign setting his sights on Italy now? And above all, is Rome ready to face this new threat from the east? By the mid-3rd century BC, the Adriatic is a turbulent sea, plagued by Illyrian pirate raids and targeted by the expansionist ambitions of powerful nations. After defeating the Illyrian queen Teuta in the wars of 229 and 219 BC, Rome established military outposts at Dyrrhachium and Corfu, its first footholds in the Balkans, crucial to defending Brindisi. Meanwhile, Greece is shaken by the social war. Ascians, Aetolians, and Macedonians battle until the Peace of Naupactus in 217 BC leaves the young King Philip V with an almost untouched army and, more importantly, freedom to maneuver westward. Here enters Demetrius of Pharos, a former Roman ally. Pursued by Roman ships, he frees Tapella and persuades Philip that the real prize is not Sparta or Athens, but the Adriatic Sea. With Macedonian support, Illyrian pirates resume their attacks on the Apulian coast. Rome quickly realizes that its fate will be decided on those treacherous waters. At the start of the conflict, the opposing forces display sharply contrasting resources. Rome controls the entire Italian peninsula up to the Arno and Rubicon rivers, as well as Sicily, Sardinia, and Corsica, with several strategic bases along the Illyrian coast. The population under Roman rule approaches 4 million. According to the 210 BC census, around 400,000 Roman citizens are fit for military service. Between 6 and 8 legions are engaged against Hannibal in Italy, so at most, Rome can dispatch 2 legions to the Adriatic front, supported by 40 Quinqueremes anchored at Brindisi. The Kingdom of Macedonia, ruled by young Philip V, stretches from the Pindus Mountains to the Nestus River, including Thessaly and part of Thrace, with around 1.5 million inhabitants. Philip commands a phalanx of 25,000 soldiers, 4,000 Thessalian cavalrymen, and more than 10,000 light Illyrian fighters. He also has about 100 small vessels, called Lembi, ideal for swift coastal operations. The Aetolian League is a confederation occupying the mountains and valleys of central and eastern Greece, with about 500,000 inhabitants. It fields about 10,000 light troops specialized in skirmishes, but has limited cavalry. Among Rome's naval allies, Pergamon, with fewer than 300,000 inhabitants, provides 25 triremes and funding, while Rhodes, a mercantile island state of about 60,000 people, contributes 12 Liburnians, agile ships ideal for fighting pirates.
Did you know that most people who watch our documentaries aren't subscribed yet? If you enjoy animated maps and history, join our community. Leave a like and subscribe so you never miss the next episodes.
216 BC. On the banks of the Ofonto, Hannibal destroys about 50,000 Roman legionnaires at Cannae. The worst defeat since the Gallic invasion. To prevent a collapse in morale, the Senate issues an unusual decree: public mourning limited to 30 days, and a total ban on mentioning the word "cane" in assemblies. Meanwhile, it lowers the conscription age to 17, promises freedom to thousands of enlisted slaves, and imposes extraordinary tributes on its allies. In southern Italy, loyalty falters. Capua immediately joins the Carthaginian side in autumn 216, while Tarentum and Syracuse remain uncertain for years, only siding with Hannibal after complex internal upheavals. As Rome rebuilds its legions, Philip V of Macedonia assesses how to take advantage of the Mediterranean chaos. In the summer of 215, Carthaginian envoys reach Pella. Sources speak of a secret pact with 8 clauses. Carthage recognizes Macedonian dominion over Greece and Illyria, while Philip promises to disrupt Roman trade and, if possible, open a front on the Italian coast. Rome responds by sending praetor Marcus Laverius Livinus, who gathers 40 Quinqueremes at Brindisi, burns Illyrian ports, and discourages any Macedonian invasion attempts. In 211, during a patrol near the mouth of the Aous, a Macedonian bireme is captured. On board, 5 encrypted letters addressed to Hannibal provide the first material evidence of the secret pact. Polybius considers it genuine and potentially decisive. Some modern scholars, however, see it as a bluff, noting that Philip never sent substantial troops and launched only light ships, unfit to counter Roman Quinqueremes. In any case, the episode turns a local conflict into a broader Mediterranean scenario, officially opening the Adriatic front of the First Macedonian War. (215 BC). Immediately after the agreement with Carthage, Philip V launches the first Macedonian naval offensive in the Adriatic. With around 100 Lembi, small, light galleys with 30 to 40 rowers per side, he swiftly sails up the Illyrian coast and occupies Lissus, a strategic port between northern pirate bases and Epirus. The attack catches Rome unprepared. The garrison is expelled, and the warehouses are instantly turned into Macedonian operating bases. Reinforced by the support of Demetrius of Pharos, Philip advances on Apollonia, but the siege fails due to a lack of siege engines and, above all, the arrival of the Roman fleet under praetor Marcus Laverius Livinus from Brindisi. 40 Quinqueremes, large ships with over 100 rowers, high hulls, and reinforced rams. Facing a vastly superior opponent, the Macedonians retreat, leaving part of their spoils behind. Livinus continues, retakes Oricum, and establishes a mixed garrison of Italic and loyal Illyrian troops, blocking Philip's passage through Epirus. He then transforms Corfu into a permanent base, useful for monitoring all Macedonian movements between the Adriatic and the Gulf of Ambracia. The Macedonian Lembi, more agile, reaching 10 knots, can easily beach themselves to escape pursuit. Quinqueremes, on the other hand, require deep waters but unleash a devastating ram strike. Thus, the clash remains asymmetric. Swift raids and sudden retreats for the Macedonians, control of routes and strategic straits for Rome. (211 BC). To ease its military burden in the Adriatic, Rome signs an agreement at Leucas with 3 key allies. The Aetolian League provides light infantry and cavalry. King Attalus I of Pergamon offers money and triremes, while Rhodes contributes the most experienced fleet in the Aegean. In return, Rome covers expenses and coordinates strategy. Thus is born the Republic's first great, low-cost coalition. The Aetolians launch an immediate attack. From central Greece, they descend into Thessaly, sacking Tricca, Lamia, and villages near Phalsalis, seizing livestock, grain, and prisoners. The loot funds allied troops. A hoplite receives 1 obol per day, a cavalryman 3. An obol is worth about 0.7 Roman denarii, enough to buy up to 3 kilos of grain on the Athenian market. Rome supplies the pay, Misthophoria, by sending silver and grain via Corfu. When Aetolia's treasury runs dry, the island of Aegina is ceded to Pergamon for 30 silver talents. Attalus thus gains a strategic base opposite Athens. Rome approves as the Pergamene presence pins down the Macedonian fleet in the Gulf of Corinth. Philip V responds by avoiding direct clashes. He strengthens coastal garrisons and installs a network of signal fires. Towers spaced roughly 30 kilometers apart, stretching from Olympus to the Sporatus. A message can cross the entire arc from Pindus to the Aegean in under 20 minutes. It's kind of an ancient optical telegraph, described by Polybius. Fast, cheap, and hard to sabotage. The Greek front thus becomes a proxy war. No side gains lasting territory, while both increase taxes, hire mercenaries, and slowly wear themselves out in a draining economic stalemate. 208 BC. After 3 years of minor clashes, the armies once again confront each other in Thessaly. Between Tricca and Lamia, Philip V deploys around 12,000 Macedonian phalangites and local levies. Opposite them, Aetolians and a few Roman cohorts, led by Praetor Publius Sulpicius, count on Cretan archers and light cavalry. 2 battles, in 208 and 207, are fought at the fords of the Peneus River without decisive outcomes. Neither side risks a frontal engagement, and the front remains frozen. Meanwhile, Rome shifts its main effort to Spain against Hasdrubal and withdraws an entire legion from Greece, leaving fewer than 6,000 men on the field, replaced by mercenaries and funded through a new 5% tax on trade at the port of Ostia. To maintain pressure, the Roman fleet conducts swift raids in the Peloponnese, burning storage sites and shipyards from Gythium to Corinth, thereby cutting the timber supply for Macedonian triremes. The worst toll, however, is economic. It's estimated that between 210 and 206, the Macedonian treasury loses about 40% of its annual revenue, dropping from 1,200 to just over 700 talents. Philip is forced to melt down royal silverware and replace bronze shields with cheaper leather-covered models. The Aetolians also fall into crisis. Without Roman subsidies, plunder no longer covers the daily pay, Misthophoria, of their troops. With coffers now empty, in autumn 206, the Aetolians sign a separate peace with Philip, who can then focus remaining resources against Pergamon and Rhodes. The stalemate in Thessaly has drained massive resources without shifting political balances in the slightest. In 205 BC, after 10 years of fruitless fighting and rising costs, Rome and Macedonia signed the Peace of Phoenice in Epirus. The agreement has 4 main clauses. 1. Philip V withdraws all Illyrian garrisons. 2. Macedonia renounces naval operations in the Adriatic. 3. 20 Illyrian hostages are handed over as a guarantee. 4. Rome pulls its fleet from Corfu, agrees not to annex Greek cities, and dissolves the Aetolian League. On the surface, things revert to the situation of 215 BC. According to Livy, the treaty clearly favors Rome. The Senate gains maritime security and can now concentrate all efforts against Carthage. Modern historian Ernst Badian, however, sees it as a compromise advantageous to Philip. No territorial losses, end of the naval blockade, and precious time to rebuild army and fleet. Both interpretations are supported by the facts. Rome lost fewer than 4,000 soldiers, but spent over 2,000 talents to fund its allies. Macedonia saw a 40% revenue drop, yet retains the core of its kingdom intact. One detail reveals the Pact's fragility. The 20 Illyrian hostages, Rome's key safeguard, are secretly released after just 2 years, without any Roman response. The consequences follow swiftly. Free in the east, Rome sends 7 legions against Hannibal. Philip ravages the Cyclades, and it challenges the Hellenistic kingdoms. Ironically, the Peace of Phoenice lasts less than 5 years. In 200 BC, the Second Macedonian War begins. For more than a century, the Macedonian Phalanx, created by Alexander the Great, had been every enemy's nightmare. 16 solid ranks of warriors whose 6-meter pikes could sweep away whole armies from Egypt to Persia. It seemed unbeatable. Yet, on a late May morning in 197 BC, in the damp mist of the Thessalian plain, something unthinkable occurs. A Roman horn tears the silence with a deafening 110 decibel blast, and 20 enormous Numidian war elephants thunder forward, slamming into Philip V's phalanx and breaking it for the very first time before Rome's astonished legionnaires. It is not just a lost battle, it is a slain myth. Since Rome has defeated Alexander's heir, who can stop her now? And that freedom of the Greeks, announced by Titus Quinctius Flamininus, will it mean true liberty or the dawn of a new empire? The Peace of Phoenice proves brief. Between 205 and 202 BC, Philip V turns Demetrius into a vast arsenal, fed by Pillion's timber and the silver of Magnesia's mines. In barely 18 months, he launches more than 40 triremes. By the end, he commands 120 warships that have cost over 100 talents, roughly 2 full years of tribute revenues. With this fleet, Philip strikes at the Aegean Bridge Islands. Chios, Thasos, and Ptolemy fall under the roar of his catapults. Chios holds out in part thanks to 70 Rhodian triremes and 50 from Pergamum, which saved the city, but not control of the vital grain corridor toward the Hellespont. Thasos endures a 3-month siege, then capitulates. At Ptolemy, the Macedonians batter breaches in the walls with heavy mobile rams. In 201, a large naval battle sees the two coalitions clash again off Chios with about 100 triremes each. The Greeks win by a narrow margin, yet Philip keeps enough ships to remain a menace. From Seleucia by the sea, he seals an accord with Antiochus III of Syria to partition the Egyptian Levant, while signal towers relay real-time warnings to the islands still free. The most dramatic turn comes at Abydos. The Macedonians break through, slaughtering the defenders. Rather than face slavery, the townspeople choose collective suicide. A polis of about 15,000 souls is almost wiped out. Outrage erupts. Rhodes and Pergamum send envoys to Rome in autumn 201 for aid. The Senate responds by dispatching 10 legates with an ultimatum: free Greece or face war. Philip tears it before the Roman messengers. The Peace of Phoenice is over. The Second Macedonian War is about to begin. In 198 BC, Philip V hopes to erase the Roman presence in Illyria and marches on Apollonia with 15,000 phalangites and the Thessalian cavalry. Rome reacts swiftly. The proconsul Publius Supplius Gabla lands at Oricum with 2 legions, around 9,000 legionnaires plus allied contingents, and beats back the first attacks. Soon after, command passes to Titus Quinticius Flamininus, an energetic young general who speaks fluent Greek and promotes among the allies the concept of Hellenic freedom. Philip blocks the approach along the Aous River, holding a narrow canyon 30 meters wide and 300 deep, ideal for the Phalanx. Flamininus orders a feigned frontal assault, but instead sends 2,000 Italian soldiers along a hidden mountain path, guided by a local shepherd paid 300 denarii, the wage of 10 farming years. At dawn, the Romans strike the Phalanx's rear, torch the barge, and spread utter, mounting panic. On the signal, the whole Roman army wades the ford. Chaos follows. Over 2,000 Macedonians fall. 1,000 are taken, while Roman casualties are tiny by comparison. With the pass open, Flamininus surges into Thessaly. Pharsalus and Tricca defect. Epirus sends food and horses. The decisive fight has not yet come, but Macedonian invincibility is broken, and Rome can strike at Greece's heart with renewed momentum. After the victory on the Aous, Flamininus deliberately avoids a decisive final battle and spends the entire winter shoring up the exposed Greek front. With 2 legions and Aetolian allies, he camps on the wide Maliac Gulf before the cliff-top fortress of Nicaea, the northern gate to Thermopylae. There he calls Macedonian envoys and states a single demand. Philip V must quit every Greek post, including Corinth, Chalcis, and Demetrios. For Athens and many other cities, it is the first time a Roman commander frankly and publicly proclaims the freedom of the Greeks. Philip tries to buy time, hoping to split the allies, but achieves the opposite. That same winter, the previously neutral Aegean League resolves to join the Roman coalition, driven by its hostility to Sparta. Shortly afterwards, Attalus I of Pergamum drops anchor at Aegina with 25 triremes, bringing a crucial gift: a chest holding 30 silver talents intended to settle the long overdue wages of the Aetolian and Aegean mercenaries. At the going rate, an hoplite earned 1 obol per day, about 0.7 denarii, while a cavalryman drew 3. The Pergamene Treaty thus covers more than 2 months of pay for some 10,000 light infantry and most of the horse. It sends a loud political message. Those who side with Rome will not lack money or supplies. The anti-Macedonian coalition now unites Rome, Aetolians, Aegeans, Pergamum, and Rhodes' fleet with more than 200 warships. Flamininus pairs diplomacy with propaganda. New silver coins minted in Corinth and Argos bear Zeus hurling a thunderbolt and the legend "Friend of the Romans." They spread swiftly across the whole Peloponnese and beyond. Rome now openly steers Greece. Philip rejects the ultimatum, and war resumes. At the very start of 197 BC, the 2 armies eye each other on Thessaly's broad, rolling plains. On one side stands the Roman Manipular Legion, arrayed in 4 lines: Hastati, Principes, Triarii, and Velites, each manipulus holding 120 men, spaced for easy maneuver. Every legionary carries 2 throwing pila and a gladius barely 1.7 kilograms heavy, shielded by a large rectangular scutum. Orders travel through the ranks by cornicines and tubicines. Their long bronze horns, about 3 meters long, curving like crescents in the sun, issue 110 decibel blasts, a roar that cuts through battle noise, marking advances, withdrawals, or manipular rotations. The legion's hidden strength lies in flexibility. Thanks to gaps between manipuli, Romans can open or close files and maneuver with ease among hills, dips, and broken ground even on uneven slopes. Opposite stands the Macedonian phalanx, 16 compact ranks in which each man grips a 6-meter sarissa weighing 5 to 7 kilograms. In the front rows, up to 5 spear points overlap, forming a near impenetrable steel wall on level ground, yet a slight dip is enough for the long lances to lose alignment, opening fatal gaps. More than 75,000 sarissas aim together perfectly at the enemy, fearsome only on regular terrain. For weeks, the armies run parallel drills. Romans stage small retreats to lure the phalanx onto rocky slopes where Macedonian lances lose cohesion. The Macedonians, seeking to prevent outflanking, extend their right wing by adding more mobile troops, peltasts with javelins and agile Thessalian horse. These light units must guard the rigid phalanx's flanks against all sudden Roman thrusts. But Flamininus holds two aces. First, a group of 20 African elephants captured in the Numidian savannah and trained in Pergamum's royal stables. Gigantic, armored beasts, perfectly suited to terrifying horses and peltasts on any battlefield. Second, the swift Aetolian light cavalry, expert horseback javelin throwers, ideally placed for striking at the enemy's flanks and rear. Flexibility opposed to rigidity. Light blades versus shafts. When fog settles on Cynoscephalae, those numbers of weight, noise, and size will turn into blood and battle. One late spring morning, a thick mist settles upon the twin, scrub-covered hilltops called Cynoscephalae, the Dogheads, which command the wide Thessalian plain. Two scouting parties, a group of Roman velites from the west and Thessalian cavalry from the east, ride out on reconnaissance. The chance clash draws swift reinforcements and, in under an hour, swells into a full line-of-battle engagement between the armies. Philip V promptly deploys the phalanx on the southern hill, facing north. The Macedonian left climbs solidly toward the second height, while the right remains lower and descends slowly. Fog and stony ground break the sarissa's alignment. Flamininus spots the imbalance at once. On his right, he pushes Hastati and Principes forward in loose order to block the descending column. Simultaneously, Aetolian horse and Roman manipuli swing round the opposite ridge, striking the struggling Macedonian wing from behind. Within minutes, Romans pin those who descend and encircle those who climb, ripping a decisive breach in the line. The final turning point comes when Flamininus notices an opening along the Macedonian flank. A single manipulus of 120 legionnaires wields 90 degrees, advancing parallel to the phalanx. Formidable from the front, the phalanx cannot fight sideways. The 6-meter sarissas cannot be swung. The ranks buckle like a concertina. New gaps yawn. The Romans hurl pila at close range and burst in with the gladius. Meanwhile, 20 Pergamena elephants charge the Thessalian cavalry rushing up to shield the right wing. Horses bolt in terror. Panic ripples through the Macedonian ranks, and the phalanx crumbles fast. After 4 hours of fighting, the outcome is plain. Ancient sources cite about 8,000 Macedonians killed and 5,000 captured against fewer than 2,000 Roman losses. Plutarch recounts that a legionary personally handed Flamininus a Macedonian shield torn from the foe, the final emblem of the phalanx's lost invincibility. Rome now dominates the Aegean and can dictate terms. After the defeat at Cynoscephalae, Philip V sues for peace. Flamininus meets him in the Vale of Tempe and imposes 4 conditions: a 1,000 talent indemnity, a fleet cut only to 5 triremes, the surrender of 20 Illyrian hostages, and the immediate evacuation of all garrisons from Corinth to Chalcis. The Roman-Macedonian frontier is henceforth fixed along the rugged Mount Pindus range. Yet political confirmation is required. A few months later, at the Isthmian Games in Corinth, a herald proclaims, "The Senate and Roman Consul declare the Greek cities free, owing no tribute and hosting no garrisons. 40,000 spectators erupt with joy. Flamininus, crowned with laurel, is hailed Soter, savior, and promises to withdraw the legions once Macedonian evacuation is completed. In the following months, Roman teams oversee the dismantling of garrisons at Demetrius, Corinth, and Chalcis. The ports pass to pro-Roman governments. The hostages set sail for Italy, and Pergamene technicians inventory the ships handed over at Piraeus. Roman troop numbers dropped swiftly to 2,000, with repatriation slated for 194. Enthusiasm is high, but not universal. Many Greeks fear that once Rome departs, Macedonia's shadow will loom again. Polybius warns that the liberty granted depends on the will of a foreign power. Celebration and suspicion mingle, while beneath Greek soil, the next conflict already germinates. It is June 168 BC, and on the ridges of Pydna along Macedonia's coast, 40,000 men await the decisive signal. From the north, Perseus' phalanx advances, brandishing 6-meter sarissas. From the south, the Roman legions push upward, freshly landed on the Thessalian shore and poised to strike in open formation. Between Mount Olympus and the river Alicamon, the final great clash of two rival worlds for mastery of Greece is about to erupt very soon, dramatically. But will one victory in the field really pacify Macedonia? And what will happen when a shadowy claimant drags war back to those same lands barely 20 years later? In 179 BC, after Philip V's death, the Macedonian throne passes to his son, Perseus. Young, ambitious, and eager to restore lost prestige, the new monarch launches a sweeping domestic reform. He organizes the royal treasury, curbs waste, and then strengthens the army once more, bringing the phalanx back to 20,000 men and hiring seasoned Thracian mercenaries renowned for courage and ferocity. Meanwhile, Perseus marries Laodice, a Seleucid princess, instantly alarming Rome. The possible rise of a Macedonian-Syrian axis between the two leading Hellenistic powers threatens to destabilize the already tense Eastern Mediterranean region. Tension erupts at the Delphic Congress in 174 BC, where Rome poses as arbiter between Macedonia and Pergamum, a longtime Roman ally. King Eumenes II of Pergamum forcefully tells the Senate back home that Perseus is pursuing aggressive diplomacy, accusing him of bankrolling dangerous alliances with the Danubian Bastarnae and with various Illyrian tribes. The alarm raised by Eumenes echoes through Rome. Senators begin debating a preemptive war, determined to prevent Perseus from rebuilding the very threat his father had posed to the Republic only a few decades earlier. In 171 BC, under the pretext of protecting the Greek polis from Perseus' alleged expansionist ambitions, Rome formally declares war on Macedonia. The Third Macedonian War has officially begun. The first military moves, however, favor the young Macedonian king. On the banks of the Aous River, some 30,000 Macedonians, Phalangites, Peltasts, and cavalry meet 20,000 Romans led by Consul Publius Licinius Crassus. The clash ends in a clear Macedonian victory. Exploiting the terrain and with numerical superiority, the mobility of Thessalian horse, and the efficiency of a reorganized phalanx, Perseus drives the legionnaires back hard, costing them over 2,000 dead or wounded. Perseus' military prestige grows further that same year, 171 BC, after the Battle of Callinicus in Thessaly. There, Macedonian forces inflict another heavy defeat on the Romans, causing further serious losses and throwing the Republic's entire Greek strategy into crisis. Yet instead of exploiting these successes swiftly, Perseus hesitates and prefers to consolidate the ground gain. The war thus turns into a grueling positional struggle along the mountain passes of Olympus. Larissa, a strategic city at the center of Thessaly, becomes the main logistical base for both armies. The Macedonian defensive lines look impregnable, yet this pause lets the Romans regain precious strength. Back in Rome, awareness grows that a radical breakthrough is urgently needed. The Senate replaces Licinius Crassus and reinforces the legions, dispatching newly raised recruits and battle-hardened veteran troops with Greek experience. The Republic thus lays the groundwork for a decisive change of strategy. The stalemate is soon to end, and Rome is determined to seize back the initiative. In 168 BC, Rome decides the time has come to settle accounts with Perseus for good. The Senate appoints Lucius Aemilius Pallas commander, a veteran of Spanish campaigns famed for severity and discipline. Before advancing, Pallas sets up an impeccable supply chain, linking the ports of Euboea directly to the Thessalian plains, guaranteeing the legionnaires a steady and abundant flow of provisions and other vital stores. Leading about 25,000 Roman and allied soldiers, Pallas crosses the treacherous pass of Petra, exploiting the legion's great mobility and endurance. Historian Polybius notes how the legionnaires, orderly and silent, marched for hours under heavy loads without losing cohesion, fully aware that the campaign's outcome would rest upon their discipline and on the favor of fortune. On the 22nd of June, 168 BC, near Pydna, Roman and Macedonian forces finally face each other for the decisive engagement. Perseus fields about 44,000 men, including 20,000 heavy phalangites carrying 6-meter sarissas. At first, the phalanx advances in close order, displaying its devastating power on open ground. But once it reaches the uneven slopes of the nearby hills, the rigid Macedonian formation rapidly loses cohesion. The soldiers break the alignment of the long sarissas, opening wide, dangerous gaps between the ranks there. This is the moment Pallas has awaited. Roman maniples, autonomous groups of about 120 men, immediately slip into the open spaces of the disordered phalanx. At the same instant, Macedonian cavalry and Thracian mercenaries on the flank yield under pressure from allied horsemen, fleeing the field. The phalanx, now encircled, collapses in under an hour. The losses are staggering. 20,000 Macedonians killed and 11,000 prisoners, while the Romans count fewer than 1,000 dead. Perseus flees north, but is caught soon after on the island of Samothrace. Thus ends the Antigonid dynasty, dominant for over a century and a half. In Rome, Pallas celebrates a magnificent triumph. More than 2,000 carts laden with gold, weapons, and treasures parade through the streets. After Pydna, the Roman legion becomes the Mediterranean's dominant military model. The Macedonian phalanx, invincible for generations, now belongs only to the history books. In 167 BC, having defeated Perseus, Rome opts against outright annexation of Macedonia, choosing a subtler path. The region is divided into 4 koina, autonomous republics with their own assemblies, forbidden to unite or raise a common army. An absolute ban is also imposed on exploiting the land's rich gold and silver mines, stripping the country of its principal economic resource for generations to come, and denying a base. To bolster this new framework, Rome deports about 1,000 members of the Macedonian elite, including the historian Polybius, as cultural hostages to Rome. The objective is twofold: guarantee the loyalty of the new republics and spread the Roman model among Macedonian aristocrats. These young nobles become indirect control instruments, symbols of the order Rome has imposed from above. Rome's strategy is plain: divide et impera. Each koinon pays taxes to the Senate separately and faces strict trade restrictions designed to prevent any rapprochement. Pro-Roman elites soon emerge, drawn by the economic and political benefits of cooperation with the Republic. Thus, an apparent Pax Macedonia arises, marked by superficial stability and indirect subjugation for now. Yet historian Ernst Badian criticizes this system, portraying it as inherently unstable and doomed to fail. The artificial divisions imposed by Rome, coupled with the resentment of local populations, form, in Badian's view, an explosive mixture. Macedonia seems pacified, but beneath the calm surface, tensions already smolder, ready to flare again soon. In 150 BC, a man named Andriscus suddenly emerges on the Macedonian scene, proclaiming himself Perseus' son and rightful Antigonid heir. Winning support from Thracian tribes and many Macedonian peasants, weary after a decade of indirect Roman rule, Andriscus rapidly gathers followers and launches a revolt against Roman authority, igniting the Fourth Macedonian War that soon engulfs villages, fortresses, and mountain passes. Rome initially underestimates the threat. In 149 BC, Praetor Publius Juventius Thalna, dispatched with scant forces to crush the rebellion, suffers a severe defeat in Thessaly. More than 4,000 legionnaires are killed, and the praetor himself falls in battle. The uprising spreads across the region, forcing the Roman Senate to intervene decisively to restore order and prestige. To confront this crisis, Rome recalls from Spain Quintus Caecilius Metellus, an experienced commander and skilled strategist, together with veteran contingents toughened by the long Celtiberian War. Metellus also receives crucial naval support from coastal Illyrian cities such as Dyrrhachium and Scodra, assuring the Romans a steady supply along the Adriatic. In 148 BC, near Pydna, Metellus meets Andriscus in the decisive clash. The Roman troops, around 20,000 men, are deployed in a classic pincers maneuver, while Numidian cavalry, an essential ally thanks to its mobility, quickly smashes the Macedonian flanks. Although Andriscus commands about 25,000 soldiers, his lines buckle swiftly. The fight lasts less than 2 hours. Roughly 10,000 Macedonians fall, and Andriscus himself is captured during the rout near the collapsing center. In Rome, Metellus celebrates a grand triumph and receives the honorific agnomen Macedonius. With Andriscus captured and the insurgency permanently suppressed, all organized resistance ends forever. Macedonia officially becomes a Roman province. The Republic's dominance in the Eastern Mediterranean is now absolute for all to see clearly. In 148 BC, after Andriscus' capture, Rome formally transforms Macedonia into its new province. To reinforce its presence, strategic colonies such as Dio and Cassandria are founded and populated by veteran legionnaires, living symbols of the Roman domination on Macedonian soil for generations to come. But Roman influence does not stop there. In 146 BC, the Achaean War leads to the dramatic destruction of Corinth, one of Greece's richest and most prestigious cities. This devastating event is a direct warning to every other polis. To rebel against Rome means losing not only autonomy, but identity itself, and perhaps their very survival. Shortly afterwards, Rome reorganizes territorial control, assigning Macedonia and Epirus to a single proconsul with full administrative and military powers. This is the final proof that the Eastern Mediterranean now lies under the direct oversight of the Roman Republic. The decisive confirmation of Roman hegemony arrives in 133 BC. Attalus III, the last king of Pergamum, bequeaths his realm to Rome, creating the Roman province of Asia. Roman power now stretches solidly from the Adriatic deep into the heart of the Aegean and Asia Minor, binding every trade route between them. The Macedonian Phalanx, once the emblem of invincibility, has vanished for good. Rome rules unchallenged over Macedonia and Greece, thus laying the groundwork for its next great challenges: the wars against the Mithridates and continued expansion eastward. A fresh Mediterranean chapter is about to open. If this journey through Macedonia's downfall enthralled you, leave a like, subscribe, and ring the bell for new episodes. Comment: in your view, was Rome a liberator or a conqueror? Share the video and keep exploring ancient history with us.